The sound of laughter echoed through the Riverside University gymnasium as a crowd gathered around the bench press station. In the center of it all sat Marcus Chen, his slight frame barely filling out his oversized hoodie, staring down at the barbell that might as well have been a mountain. "Come on, stick boy. Even my little sister could lift more than that." What nobody knew was that Marcus had been hiding a secret for his entire life, one that would shatter everything they thought they knew about strength, power, and what it truly meant to be unbreakable. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus Chen adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses as he walked through the crowded hallways of Riverside University, his backpack slung over one shoulder. At 5'7", with a build that most people generously called lean, he had grown accustomed to being invisible. But today, invisibility wasn't an option. "Hey, Marcus," called out Jessica Rodriguez from behind him. Her voice carried that particular tone that made his stomach drop, the one that meant trouble was coming. "Where are you rushing off to?" Marcus turned around, knowing better than to ignore her. Jessica was everything he wasn't. Confident, popular, and dating Derek Thompson, the star of the university's football team. She stood with her usual entourage, including her best friends Sarah Mitchell and Derek's teammate Brandon Hayes. "Just heading to the library," Marcus replied quietly, clutching his physics textbook tighter against his chest. Derek stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over Marcus. At 6'3" and built like a linebacker, which he was, Derek had the kind of presence that commanded attention wherever he went. "Actually, Marcus, we've been looking for you, haven't we, babe?" Jessica smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile that reached her eyes. "That's right. You see, Marcus, we have a little proposition for you." Marcus felt his heart rate increase. Nothing good ever came from Derek Thompson having propositions. "I really need to study for my—" "Oh, come on," Sarah interrupted, flipping her blonde hair over her shoulder. "Don't be such a nerd all the time. We want to invite you to something special." Brandon chuckled, his arms crossed over his chest. "Yeah, Marcus, we think it's time you joined us for some physical education." The group began walking, and Marcus found himself being herded along with them toward the university gym. Students in the hallway turned to watch the unusual parade, the popular kids escorting the quiet physics major like some kind of strange procession. "Where exactly are we going?" Marcus asked, though he had a sinking feeling he already knew. "The gym, obviously," Derek said, clapping a heavy hand on Marcus's shoulder that nearly sent him stumbling. "See, we've been watching you, Marcus. All this time at university, and we've never once seen you in the gym. That's not healthy, man." "I prefer other forms of exercise," Marcus mumbled, thinking of the private training he did in his family's basement back home, training that nobody could ever know about. Jessica laughed. "Like what, speed walking to the library?" The gym doors swung open, revealing the usual afternoon crowd of students working out. The familiar smell of sweat and cleaning products filled the air, along with the rhythmic clanking of weights and the whir of cardio machines. Derek guided Marcus toward the free weights section where several other football players were already gathered. Marcus recognized them all: Tyler Brooks, the team captain, Jake Morrison, the starting quarterback, and Alex Rodriguez, Jessica's older brother and the team's defensive coordinator. "Look what we brought, guys," Derek announced loudly, drawing the attention of nearby students. "Our friend Marcus here wants to learn about real exercise." Marcus felt his face burning with embarrassment as more people began to gather around. This was exactly what he'd spent his entire life trying to avoid, being the center of attention, especially in a situation that could expose his secret. Tyler Brooks looked Marcus up and down with obvious amusement. "Seriously, Derek, this guy looks like he'd snap in half if I breathed on him too hard." "That's exactly the point," Derek said, his voice carrying across the gym. "Marcus here thinks he's too good for physical fitness. Always has his nose buried in some book about, what was it, quantum physics?" "Theoretical physics," Marcus corrected quietly, immediately regretting it when the group burst into laughter. Jake Morrison shook his head in mock sympathy. "Theoretical physics. That explains why you look like you've never seen the inside of a gym." "Theoretical muscles, right, Marcus?" The crowd around them was growing larger, with students abandoning their own workouts to watch the spectacle. Marcus spotted several classmates from his advanced physics seminar looking uncomfortable, but not brave enough to intervene. "All right, here's what we're going to do," Derek announced, moving toward the bench press station. "We're going to start Marcus off with something simple, just the bar. No weights, Think you can handle 45 pounds, Professor? Marcus stared at the empty barbell on the bench. 45 pounds. He could lift Derek himself without breaking a sweat. But that was exactly the problem. Any display of his real strength would raise questions he couldn't answer. Questions about where a skinny physics student learned to generate that kind of power. Questions about his family, his background, and the secret that had shaped his entire life. I don't really want to, Marcus began. Oh, come on, Sarah called out from the crowd. Don't be a wimp. It's just an empty bar. Brandon stepped closer, his voice taking on a more aggressive tone. Yeah, Marcus, unless you're admitting that you're too weak even for that. The crowd was getting restless, feeding off the energy of potential humiliation. Marcus could see phone cameras starting to come out, ready to capture whatever happened next. He thought about his father's warnings, about staying under the radar, about never letting anyone see what he could really do. But he also thought about the years of mockery, the constant assumptions about his weakness, the way people looked right through him as if he didn't matter. Fine, Marcus said quietly, removing his hoodie and revealing arms that, while not bulky, were more defined than his clothes had suggested. I'll try it. The crowd cheered, but it wasn't the kind of cheering that was meant to encourage. It was the sound of people gathering to watch a spectacle, to see someone fail. Derek positioned himself behind the bench as a spotter, his massive hands hovering near the bar. All right, Marcus. Let's see what theoretical physics has taught you about practical strength. Marcus lay down on the bench, his hands gripping the cold metal of the barbell. The weight felt like nothing in his hands. He could probably bench press Derek's car if he wanted to. But instead, he had to pretend that 45 pounds was a challenge. He began to lift the bar, making sure to show just enough strain to be believable, but not so much that it looked completely fake. The bar rose smoothly from the rack, and Marcus began to lower it toward his chest. Look at him shake, Tyler called out, though Marcus wasn't actually shaking at all. He can barely control it. This is painful to watch, Jessica added, her voice dripping with false concern. Maybe we should start him with just a broomstick. Marcus pressed the bar back up, completing one repetition with what he hoped looked like significant effort. The crowd's laughter grew louder, and he could hear comments being made about his form, his strength, and his general worthiness as a human being. Come on, Marcus, Derek said loudly. My girlfriend's yoga class could do better than that. Give us at least 5 reps. As Marcus continued the charade, lowering and pressing the empty bar while pretending it was challenging, he caught sight of someone standing at the edge of the crowd. Professor Elena Vasquez, his theoretical physics instructor, was watching with a concerned expression. She knew Marcus better than most, knew his brilliant mind, his dedication to his studies, and his quiet dignity. Their eyes met for just a moment, and Marcus saw something in her expression that surprised him. It wasn't pity or amusement like the others, it was recognition, as if she understood that there was more to this situation than what appeared on the surface. But the moment passed quickly as Derek's voice boomed out again. That's 3. Come on, stick boy. 2 more, and you'll have accomplished something today. Marcus completed the final 2 repetitions, his mind racing with thoughts of what would happen next. This couldn't be the end of it. Derek and his friends never stopped at just one humiliation. They would push further, demand more, until something went wrong. As he racked the bar and sat up on the bench, Derek clapped his hands together loudly. Well, there you have it, folks. Marcus Chen, theoretical physicist and theoretical weightlifter. The crowd erupted in laughter and scattered applause, already beginning to disperse now that the show was over. But Derek wasn't finished. You know what, Marcus? Derek said, his voice taking on a tone that Marcus recognized as dangerous. I think you've got potential. What do you say we make this a regular thing? Maybe tomorrow we'll try adding some actual weight to that bar. Start with maybe 25 pounds on each side. Marcus felt his stomach drop. 25 pounds on each side would make it 95 pounds total. Still nothing for him, but it would require an even more elaborate performance of fake struggle. I really don't think, Marcus started. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Oh, I insist, Derek interrupted, his hand clamping down on Marcus's shoulder again. Consider it my personal mission to help you become a real man. Can't you have graduated from this university without learning what real strength feels like, right? As the group finally began to disperse, Marcus gathered his hoodie and backpack, his mind churning with the implications of what had just happened. He'd managed to get through this encounter without revealing his secret, but Derek's promise of future training sessions meant this was just the beginning. Walking toward the gym exit, Marcus passed by the rack of dumbbells and couldn't help but glance at the heaviest ones, 150 pounds each. He could curl those like they were made of foam, could probably tear them in half if he wasn't careful. But instead, he was stuck pretending that an empty barbell was a challenge. As he pushed through the gym doors and stepped back into the hallway, Marcus made a decision. He couldn't keep running from confrontations forever. Eventually, Derek would push too far, demand too much, and the truth would have to come out. The only question was, when that moment came, would he be ready for the consequences? Marcus spent the rest of the afternoon in his small dormitory room, staring at the physics textbook open on his desk but unable to focus on the equations swimming before his eyes. His roommate, David Park, had gone home for the weekend, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and the growing certainty that his carefully constructed life was about to unravel. The knock on his door came at exactly 7:30 p.m., just as Marcus was contemplating calling his father. Before he could answer, the door swung open to reveal Professor Elena Vasquez holding 2 cups of coffee from the campus cafe. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion," she said, stepping into the room and closing the door behind her, "but I thought we should talk." Marcus immediately stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. Professor Vasquez was in her early 40s, with graying black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and intelligent dark eyes that seemed to see through everything. She was one of the most respected physicists at Riverside University, and Marcus had always admired her work on quantum mechanics applications. "Professor, I can explain about today," Marcus began. "Can you?" she asked, setting one coffee cup on his desk and settling into David's desk chair. Because from where I stood, it looked like a very interesting demonstration of applied physics. Specifically, the careful calculation of force distribution to create the illusion of struggle. Marcus felt his blood run cold. "I don't know what you mean." Professor Vasquez smiled, but it wasn't mocking like the expressions he'd faced in the gym. It was understanding, almost sympathetic. "Marcus, I've been teaching physics for 20 years. I know what real muscular strain looks like, and I know what controlled movement looks like. What I saw today was a very carefully orchestrated performance." She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out her phone, showing Marcus a slow-motion video she'd apparently taken during the gym incident. "Watch your shoulders here," she said, pointing to the screen. "No tremor, no actual compensation for instability. Your breathing pattern never changed. And most telling of all, look at your grip on the bar." Marcus leaned forward reluctantly and saw what she meant. His hands weren't gripping the bar the way someone struggling with a heavy weight would. They were relaxed, controlled, as if the bar weighed nothing at all. "That's not conclusive evidence of anything," Marcus said weakly. "No, it's not," Professor Vasquez agreed, "but this might be." She pulled up another video on her phone, this one from the university's security cameras. It showed the exterior of the physics building from 3 weeks ago, during the severe thunderstorm that had knocked out power across half the campus. In the grainy footage, Marcus could see himself helping Professor Martinez load equipment into his car before the storm hit. What made Marcus's stomach drop was the moment when a heavy steel beam, part of the construction work being done on the building's roof, came loose in the wind and fell directly toward Professor Martinez. The video showed Marcus moving with impossible speed, catching the beam one-handed and setting it aside as if it weighed no more than a pool noodle. "Security footage from that night," Professor Vasquez said quietly. "I only saw it because I was reviewing the storm damage reports for the insurance claim. That beam weighs approximately 800 pounds, Marcus. The force of its fall would have added considerably more to that." Quote. Marcus slumped back in his chair, all pretense falling away. "How many people have seen this?" "Just me. I had the file transferred to my personal drive and deleted the original. As far as the university knows, the security system malfunctioned that night due to the storm." "Why?" Marcus asked, genuinely confused. "Why would you cover for me?" Professor Vasquez leaned forward, her expression serious. "Because 30 years ago, I had a student much like you. Brilliant mind, kept to himself, always seemed to be carrying some enormous weight on his shoulders. His name was Dr. James Morrison." Marcus's eyes widened. "Morrison? Like Jake Morrison?" "Jake's father," Professor Vasquez confirmed. "Dr. James Morrison, former theoretical physicist, current Director of Advanced Research at Morrison Defense Technologies. And like you, he had abilities that couldn't be easily explained by conventional science. She pulled out a worn photograph from her wallet, showing a young man who looked remarkably similar to Jake Morrison, but with the same careful, guarded expression that Marcus recognized from his own mirror. James came to me when he was about your age, terrified that his secret would be discovered. He could manipulate electromagnetic fields with his mind, generate localized energy bursts, things that should have been impossible. But they weren't impossible, they were just operating on principles we didn't understand yet. Marcus stared at the photograph, his mind racing. What happened to him? He learned to control his abilities, studied them, and eventually founded one of the most advanced research companies in the country. His work has contributed to breakthroughs in materials, science, energy production, and theoretical physics that have changed the world. Professor Vasquez put the photograph away and fixed Marcus with a steady gaze. The question is, what are you going to do with your abilities? For a long moment, Marcus sat in silence, processing this revelation. Finally, he spoke. How did you know? About Dr. Morrison, I mean. How did you figure out what he could do? The same way I figured out what you can do, she replied. I pay attention. I notice when the laws of physics seem to bend around certain individuals. And I've spent my career studying the theoretical possibilities of human enhancement through quantum field manipulation. She stood up and moved to Marcus's window, looking out at the campus below. Tell me, Marcus, have you ever wondered why you're so much stronger than you should be? Have you considered the source of your abilities? Marcus joined her at the window. My father always said it was genetic, that our family was different, but he never explained how or why. What's your father's background? He worked in materials testing for the military before I was born. He never talks about it much, just says he was involved in some classified research projects. Professor Vasquez nodded slowly. That fits a pattern I've been tracking for years. Children of individuals who were exposed to certain experimental technologies during the 1980s and 1990s, all displaying enhanced physical capabilities that seem to operate outside normal biological constraints. She turned back to Marcus. I think your father was part of something called Project Prometheus. It was a classified military research program focused on human enhancement through quantum field exposure. The project was shut down in 1995 after complications arose. What kind of complications? The kind that would explain why your father never talks about his work and why he's so insistent that you keep your abilities hidden. Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Derek Thompson. Hey, theoretical boy, hope you're practicing for tomorrow. 95 pounds won't lift itself. Gym, 3 p.m. sharp. Don't disappoint the fans. Professor Vasquez glanced at the message. He's not going to stop, is he? No, Marcus said grimly. Derek's the type who smells weakness and keeps pushing until he gets the reaction he wants. And what happens when you can't maintain the charade anymore, when he adds too much weight or pushes you into a situation where you can't fake struggling? Marcus had been wondering the same thing. I don't know, I've been hiding this my whole life. My father drilled it into me from childhood. Never let anyone see what you can really do. Never draw attention to yourself. Never give them a reason to ask questions. Those were good rules for a child, Professor Vasquez said. But you're not a child anymore. And the world is changing. There are others like you out there, Marcus. Dr. Morrison wasn't the only one. I've been tracking similar cases for years, building a network of individuals with enhanced abilities. She pulled out a business card and handed it to Marcus. It looked like an ordinary university business card, but when Marcus held it up to the light, he could see additional text printed in a special ink. Prometheus Research Initiative, Dr. Elena Vasquez, Director. Prometheus Research Initiative, an unofficial organization dedicated to studying and supporting individuals affected by the original Project Prometheus. We help people like you understand their abilities, learn to control them, and find ways to use them productively without exposing themselves to unwanted attention. Marcus studied the card. How many others are there? More than you might think. Dr. Morrison's son Jake, for instance. Jake? Marcus nearly dropped the card. Jake Morrison has abilities too? Enhanced speed and reflexes, though he's always channeled them into football rather than academic pursuits. He doesn't know about his father's background or about the source of his abilities. As far as he knows, he's just naturally gifted. This revelation changed everything Marcus thought he knew about his situation. Jake Morrison, the star quarterback who seemed to effortlessly excel at everything, was dealing with the same kind of secret that Marcus carried. Does Jake know about me? No, and that's where things get complicated. Professor Vasquez sat back down, her expression growing serious. You see, there's another group that's been tracking Prometheus's children. They call themselves the Heritage Foundation, and their goals are very different from ours. Different how? The Heritage Foundation believes that enhanced individuals should be identified, studied, and ultimately controlled by the government. They see people like you as potential weapons rather than human beings with extraordinary gifts. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Are they here? At the university? I believe so. There have been too many coincidences lately. New faculty members with questionable credentials, unusual interest in certain students' backgrounds, funding for research projects that don't quite make sense. She pulled out her phone and showed Marcus a faculty directory page. Dr. Richard Sterling, new associate professor in the psychology department. Officially, he's here to study stress responses in college athletes. Unofficially, I believe he's from the Heritage Foundation. Marcus looked at the photo of Dr. Sterling, a middle-aged man with sharp features and cold eyes. What does this have to do with Derek and what happened today? Quote, think about it, Marcus. Derek Thompson, star football player with a reputation for pushing people to their limits. Dr. Sterling, whose research supposedly focuses on how individuals respond to extreme pressure. And you, a Prometheus child who's been successfully hiding his abilities for years. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. You think Derek is working with Dr. Sterling? That today was some kind of test? I think Derek might not even realize he's being manipulated. Dr. Sterling could easily be feeding him suggestions, encouraging him to push you harder, to create situations where your true abilities might be revealed. Marcus stood up and began pacing, his mind racing through the events of the day with this new perspective. Derek's sudden interest in getting him to the gym, the specific focus on weightlifting rather than other forms of exercise, the insistence on making it a public spectacle, it all seemed much less random now. What am I supposed to do? Marcus asked. I can't just disappear. I'm in the middle of my degree, my research. You don't have to disappear, Professor Vasquez said, but you do need to be more careful. And you need to start thinking about the possibility that your secret might not stay secret much longer. She stood up and moved toward the door. I want you to consider joining the Prometheus Research Initiative, Marcus. We can help you understand your abilities better, teach you more sophisticated ways to control and conceal them, and connect you with others who understand what you're going through. What about tomorrow? What am I supposed to do about Derek's challenge? Professor Vasquez paused with her hand on the doorknob. That's your choice to make, but remember, sometimes the best way to hide your true strength is to reveal just enough of it to satisfy people's curiosity while keeping the real extent of your abilities secret. After she left, Marcus sat alone in his room, staring at the business card she'd given him. Everything he thought he knew about his situation had changed in the course of a single conversation. He wasn't alone, his father's warnings might not be sufficient anymore, and the comfortable isolation he'd maintained throughout his college years was about to come to an end. He pulled out his phone and stared at Derek's message again. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. he would have to make a choice that could change the course of his entire life. But first, he needed to call his father. The phone rang 3 times before Dr. Michael Chen's familiar voice answered. Marcus, it's late for you to be calling. Dad, we need to talk, Marcus said, his voice steadier than he felt. I think Project Prometheus is catching up with me. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When his father spoke again, his voice was grim. How much do you know? More than I did this morning. And I think tomorrow I'm going to know a lot more. Marcus, whatever you're thinking of doing. Dad, I can't keep running from this forever. Professor Vasquez says there are others like me, and there are people who want to control us. I need to understand what I'm really dealing with. Another pause. Professor Vasquez? Elena Vasquez? You know her? I knew her husband. Dr. Robert Vasquez was my research partner on Project Prometheus. He died in one of the early experiments. Dr. Chen's voice was heavy with old guilt. If Elena is involved in this, then the situation is more serious than I thought. Dad, what really happened in Project Prometheus? That's a conversation for when you come home, son. But Marcus, if you're going to reveal your abilities, even partially, you need to be very careful about who sees it and how much you show them. There are forces at work that you don't understand yet. "I'm starting to understand more than you think," Marcus replied. "And tomorrow, I'm going to find out just how deep this goes." After ending the call, Marcus walked to his small dorm room closet and moved aside the loose floorboard where he kept his most important possessions. Hidden beneath his academic awards and family photos was a small metal cylinder that his father had given him on his 18th birthday. "If you ever need proof of who you really are," his father had said, "break this open, but only if you're absolutely certain you're ready for the consequences." Marcus held the cylinder up to the light, wondering what secrets it contained. Tomorrow, he might finally find out. But tonight, he had preparations to make. Marcus arrived at the gym 15 minutes early, not because he was eager for the confrontation, but because he needed to assess the situation before Derek and his crew showed up. The afternoon crowd was lighter than usual, mostly dedicated athletes and a few graduate students squeezing in workouts between classes. He'd spent the morning in Professor Vasquez's private lab, learning techniques for controlled strength demonstration that would satisfy observers without revealing the true extent of his abilities. The key, she'd explained, was to show just enough improvement to be believable while maintaining the illusion of struggle. "Remember," she told him, 95 pounds should feel challenging but manageable for someone your size who's been secretly practicing. Show strain, but not failure. Let them think you're stronger than you appeared yesterday, but not impossibly so." Now, standing in the gym, Marcus spotted his first surprise. Jake Morrison was already there, working through an intense cardio routine on one of the rowing machines. Their eyes met across the gym floor, and Jake gave him a brief nod. Not friendly, but not hostile either, just acknowledgement. Marcus moved to a corner where he could observe without being obvious about it. Jake's workout was unlike anything Marcus had seen from other athletes. His movements were too fluid, too perfectly coordinated. Every stroke on the rowing machine was identical to the last, as if he were a machine calibrated for optimal efficiency rather than a human being dealing with fatigue and muscle variability. Interesting, isn't it? Marcus turned to find Dr. Richard Sterling standing behind him, dressed in casual workout clothes, but somehow managing to look formal anyway. Up close, the psychology professor was taller than Marcus had expected, with the kind of penetrating stare that made people want to confess things they'd never done. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, feigning confusion. "Mr. Morrison's training regimen," Dr. Sterling clarified, gesturing toward Jake. "I've been observing student-athletes for my research, and his consistency is remarkable, almost superhuman, one might say." The word choice felt deliberate, like a probe. Marcus kept his expression neutral. "He's always been a natural athlete." "Natural," Dr. Sterling repeated, as if tasting the word. "Yes, that's what everyone says, but I find that natural ability often has very unnatural explanations when you dig deep enough." Before Marcus could respond, Derek's voice boomed across the gym. "Marcus, there you are, buddy. Ready for your big moment?" Marcus turned to see Derek approaching with his usual entourage, but the group was larger today. In addition to Jessica, Sarah, Brandon, and Tyler, there were at least a dozen other students following along, some from Marcus's physics classes, others he recognized from around campus but had never spoken to. "Looks like word got around," Jessica said with a smirk. "Half the sophomore class wants to see if you can actually lift real weight this time." Marcus noticed that several people were already holding up their phones, ready to record whatever happened next. In the corner of his eye, he saw Jake Morrison finishing his rowing session and moving to a position where he could observe the bench press area. "All right, Marcus," Derek said, clapping his hands together. "Today, we're going to see if yesterday's performance was just beginner's nerves, or if you're really as weak as you look." The bench press station had been set up with 45 pounds on each side, just as Derek had promised, 95 pounds total. For Marcus, it might as well have been 95 ounces, but he approached the bench with the appropriate mixture of nervousness and determination that the situation called for. "Wait," called out a voice from the crowd. Marcus looked over to see Amy Foster, a junior from his advanced physics seminar, pushing through the group. "This isn't fair. You can't just throw someone into lifting 95 pounds without proper warm-up and form instruction." Derek laughed. "Amy, sweetheart, this isn't rocket science. It's just moving weight from point A to point B. Actually," Amy continued, her voice growing stronger, "improper form with weight can cause serious injury. If you're going to make Marcus do this, At least let someone who knows about weightlifting help him with his technique. Marcus felt a surge of gratitude toward Amy, but also concern. He didn't want her to become a target of Derek's group simply for defending him. "Fine," Derek said with exaggerated patience. "Jake, you're the expert here. Come show Marcus how it's done." All eyes turned to Jake Morrison, who had been quietly observing from his position near the free weights. For a moment, Marcus thought Jake might refuse. There was something in his expression that suggested he understood this was more than just friendly instruction. But Jake walked over to the bench press station, his movements carrying that same uncanny precision Marcus had noticed during his workout. "All right," Jake said, his voice surprisingly calm. "Marcus, let me show you the basics." Quote, what happened next was unlike any weightlifting instruction Marcus had ever seen. Jake didn't just demonstrate proper form. He seemed to analyze the physics of the movement in real time, adjusting his grip and positioning with mathematical precision. "See, the key is understanding force distribution," Jake said, lying down on the bench. "You want to create a stable base with your shoulders. Engage your core for stability, and think of the bar path as a straight line rather than an arc." Jake unracked the 95 pounds and began a demonstration set. But as Marcus watched, he realized that Jake was doing something extraordinary. He was lifting the weight with perfect form, but he was also deliberately adding tiny inefficiencies to his movement, microscopic hesitations and adjustments that would make the lift appear more difficult than it actually was for him. Jake was performing the same kind of controlled demonstration that Professor Vasquez had taught Marcus, hiding his true strength while appearing to exert appropriate effort. "Your turn," Jake said, re-racking the weight and stepping aside. But as he moved past Marcus, he whispered something so quietly that only Marcus could hear. "Show them strength, but not power." Marcus lay down on the bench, his mind racing with the implications of Jake's words. Did Jake know about his abilities? Was this some kind of test? Or was Jake trying to help him navigate the same kind of situation he'd presumably faced himself? The weight felt absurd in his hands. He could probably bench press Derek's car, but Marcus focused on Professor Vasquez's instructions. Show strain, but not failure. Display improvement, but maintain believability. He unracked the weight and began his first repetition. This time, instead of the obviously fake struggle he'd performed yesterday, Marcus allowed his muscles to display real tension while carefully controlling the speed of the movement. To observers, it would look like he was working hard but successfully managing the weight. "Not bad," Derek called out, though he sounded somewhat disappointed. "Let's see 5 reps." Marcus completed the first repetition and moved into the second. Around him, he could hear the crowd's commentary shifting from mockery to genuine interest. This wasn't the spectacular failure they'd been expecting. "Holy crap, he's actually doing it," someone whispered. "Where was this yesterday?" another voice asked. Marcus finished the third repetition. And that's when he noticed Dr. Sterling moving closer to the bench press station. The psychology professor's eyes weren't on Marcus's face or his form. They were focused intently on his hands, studying the way his fingers gripped the bar. Fourth repetition. Marcus was beginning to understand Jake's whispered advice. Showing strength meant demonstrating that he wasn't as weak as he appeared. But showing power would mean revealing capabilities that went beyond normal human parameters. As he began the fifth and final repetition, Marcus made a calculated decision. Instead of completing the lift smoothly, he allowed a slight tremor into his arms. Not enough to suggest failure, but enough to indicate that he was pushing his limits. The bar rose slowly, Marcus's breathing becoming more labored, though not from actual exertion, and finally locked out at the top. The crowd erupted in surprised applause and cheers. "Well, I'll be damned," Tyler Brooks said, shaking his head. "Looks like the nerd's been holding out on us." Marcus sat up on the bench, accepting the congratulations and backslaps from people who had been mocking him 24 hours earlier. But his attention was focused on 2 specific reactions. Jake Morrison was nodding approvingly, but there was something else in his expression. Recognition, as if he understood exactly what Marcus had just accomplished and why. Dr. Sterling, however, was taking notes on a small pad he'd pulled from his pocket. His expression was thoughtful, analytical, and somehow predatory. "Impressive improvement in such a short time," Dr. Sterling said, approaching the group. "Mind if I ask what changed between yesterday and today?" Marcus had prepared for this question. "I went home and looked up some technique videos online. Plus, I think yesterday I was just nervous with everyone watching." Ah, the power of preparation and confidence, Dr. Sterling said, but his tone suggested he didn't entirely buy the explanation. You know, Marcus, I'd be very interested in having you participate in some of my research on performance psychology. How individuals respond to pressure, overcome perceived limitations, that sort of thing. Every instinct Marcus had was screaming danger, but he forced himself to respond casually. What kind of research? Nothing invasive. Just some cognitive assessments, physical baseline measurements, stress response monitoring. I'm particularly interested in individuals who show unexpected capabilities under pressure. Like lifting more weight than people expect? Marcus asked. Dr. Sterling smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Among other things. Before Marcus could respond, Jessica Rodriguez stepped between them. Enough shop talk, she said. Marcus just proved he's not completely hopeless. I think that calls for a celebration. Derek clapped Marcus on the shoulder. Jessica's right. You know what? You've earned yourself an invitation to Tyler's party this Saturday. It's going to be the event of the semester. Marcus felt the group's attention shifting from his gym performance to the social implications of this invitation. Tyler Brooks's parties were legendary at Riverside University, exclusive gatherings that served as informal networking events for the campus elite. I don't know, Marcus said. Parties aren't really my thing. Oh, come on, Sarah Mitchell chimed in. You can't spend all your time buried in textbooks. Live a little. Amy Foster appeared at Marcus's side. Actually, that sounds great. Marcus, I'd love to go with you if you're interested. The offer caught Marcus completely off guard. Amy was attractive, intelligent, and from what he knew, came from a prominent family. Her interest in him seemed genuine, but it also complicated an already complex situation. That's perfect, Jessica said, her enthusiasm seeming slightly forced. Amy can make sure Marcus doesn't spend the whole party hiding in a corner reading physics journals. As the group began to disperse, Marcus found himself walking toward the gym exit with Amy beside him. Behind them, he could hear Derek and his friends already planning how to integrate the new Marcus into their social circle. Thank you, Marcus said quietly to Amy as they reached the hallway, for defending me back there and for the party invitation. Amy smiled. Just returning the favor. You helped me with that quantum mechanics problem set last month, remember? Besides, I have a feeling you're more interesting than you let people think. After Amy headed off to her next class, Marcus lingered in the hallway, processing what had just happened. He'd successfully navigated Derek's challenge without revealing too much of his true abilities. He'd gained social acceptance and even romantic interest. By any normal measure, the day had been a complete success. So why did he feel like he just painted a target on his back? His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Well played today. But this is just the beginning. We need to meet. Tonight. Old Physics Building, room 237. Come alone. A friend who understands. Marcus stared at the message, his heart rate increasing. Room 237 was in the oldest part of the physics building, an area that was supposedly closed for renovations but had been abandoned for months. A second message arrived immediately. Don't let Sterling get too close. He's not what he seems, and neither are you. Marcus deleted both messages and headed back to his dorm, his mind churning with new questions. Who had sent those texts? How many people knew about his abilities? And what was waiting for him in room 237 tonight? One thing was certain. His days of hiding in plain sight were definitely over. The old physics building stood like a monument to forgotten research, its Gothic architecture casting long shadows across the campus quad as Marcus approached at 11:47 p.m. Most students avoided this area after dark. The building had been officially closed for renovation since his freshman year, though Marcus had never seen any actual construction work being done. He slipped through the side entrance he'd discovered during his sophomore year, when he'd needed a quiet place to practice controlling his strength away from prying eyes. The door's electronic lock had been broken for months, and campus security rarely patrolled this section of the university. The interior hallways were darker than Marcus remembered, illuminated only by emergency lighting that cast eerie red glows at regular intervals. His footsteps echoed despite his attempts to move quietly, and he found himself unconsciously listening for any sound that might indicate he wasn't alone. Room 237 was on the second floor, at the end of a corridor lined with abandoned laboratories. As Marcus climbed the stairs, he noticed something that made him pause, fresh footprints in the dust covering the steps. Someone else had been here recently, and from the size and tread pattern, it looked like they'd been here multiple times. The door to room 237 was slightly ajar, revealing nothing but darkness beyond. Marcus hesitated for a moment, every instinct telling him this could be a trap. But the mysterious text messages had known details about Dr. Sterling and his situation that suggested whoever sent them was genuinely trying to help. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was larger than he'd expected. Clearly a former research laboratory, with workbenches along the walls and a complex ventilation system overhead. But what caught his attention immediately were the three figures waiting for him in the center of the room. Professor Elena Vasquez stood next to a tall woman with short auburn hair whom Marcus didn't recognize. And leaning against one of the workbenches, arms crossed and looking completely at ease despite the clandestine circumstances, was Jake Morrison. "Close the door behind you," the auburn-haired woman said, her voice carrying an authority that made Marcus comply automatically. "We have a lot to discuss and limited time to do it." "Jake?" Marcus said, still processing the quarterback's presence. "You sent those messages?" Jake shook his head. "That was Dr. Rachel Martinez," he said, gesturing toward the auburn-haired woman. "She's been coordinating this little gathering." Dr. Martinez stepped forward, extending her hand to Marcus. "Dr. Rachel Martinez, former military intelligence, current coordinator for the Prometheus Research Initiative. I've been looking forward to meeting you, Marcus." Marcus shook her hand, noting that her grip was unusually strong for someone her size. "How many people know about my abilities?" "Fewer than you might fear, more than you'd probably like," Dr. Martinez replied. "Elena filled me in on yesterday's conversation, and Jake here has been helping us monitor Dr. Sterling's activities on campus." "Monitor Dr. Sterling?" Marcus looked between the three adults. "How long has this been going on?" Jake pushed off from the workbench and moved to one of the covered windows. "About 6 months. Dr. Martinez contacted me last spring, told me about my father's history with Project Prometheus, and explained why I've always been faster and stronger than I should be." "Your father never told you?" "My father spent my entire childhood trying to pretend Project Prometheus never happened," Jake said, his voice carrying a note of old anger. "He wanted me to have a normal life, so he never explained why I could outrun cars or why I needed to hold back during every football game to avoid seriously injuring other players." Dr. Martinez activated a small device that looked like a tablet, and suddenly the room was filled with a soft humming sound. "White noise generator," she explained. "In case anyone is trying to listen in. Jake, why don't you show Marcus what you can really do?" Quote. Jake looked around the room and spotted a steel support beam that was part of the building's infrastructure. Without any apparent effort, he reached up and bent the beam into a pretzel shape with his bare hands. "Jesus Christ," Marcus whispered. "Enhanced strength and speed, courtesy of quantum field exposure in utero," Jake said matter-of-factly. "My father was working with experimental energy sources when my mother was pregnant. The exposure altered my genetic structure in ways that science is still trying to understand." Professor Vasquez moved to another workbench and uncovered what appeared to be a sophisticated computer terminal. "We've been tracking Heritage Foundation activities at universities across the country. They've been identifying Prometheus children through psychological profiling, academic performance analysis, and manufactured stress situations." "Like Derek's challenge in the gym," Marcus realized. "Exactly. Dr. Sterling has been feeding Derek suggestions, encouraging him to push you into situations where your abilities might be revealed. What you did today, showing controlled strength without revealing your true capabilities, was actually the perfect response." Dr. Martinez pulled up a holographic display from her device, showing a map of the United States with dozens of red dots scattered across it. Each of these represents a confirmed or suspected Prometheus child. Over the past 2 years, 17 of them have disappeared. Disappeared? Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "Recruited, abducted, or eliminated," Dr. Martinez said grimly. "The Heritage Foundation believes that enhanced individuals represent either valuable assets to be controlled or potential threats to be neutralized. They don't particularly care about the difference." Jake turned from the window. "That's why we need to be proactive. The Prometheus Research Initiative isn't just about studying our abilities. It's about protecting people like us and finding ways to use our capabilities to actually help the world." Professor Vasquez typed something into the computer terminal, and the holographic display changed to show detailed profiles of various individuals. Marcus recognized some of the faces from news reports and academic publications. Dr. Sarah Chen, breakthrough physicist working on sustainable energy, enhanced cognitive processing speed. Professor Vasquez explained, pointing to different profiles. Lieutenant Colonel David Rodriguez, decorated Special Forces officer, enhanced physical resilience and healing. Dr. Michael Thompson, leading researcher in materials science, ability to manipulate molecular structures at the quantum level. Thompson? Marcus said. Any relation to Derek Thompson? His uncle, Dr. Martinez, confirmed. Another reason why Derek's harassment of you isn't coincidental. Dr. Michael Thompson has been working with the Heritage Foundation, helping them identify and recruit enhanced individuals. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. So Derek doesn't know he's being used? Derek thinks he's just having fun, humiliating someone he sees as weak, Jake said. He has no idea that his uncle is using him to gather intelligence on potential Prometheus children. Dr. Martinez moved to another section of the display, which brings us to why we're all here tonight. Dr. Sterling is planning to escalate his investigation of you. Our intelligence suggests he's going to propose including you in a, quote, special research study that will involve much more invasive testing. What kind of testing? Professor Vasquez looked grim. Genetic analysis, neurological scans, stress response measurements that would reveal the full extent of your abilities. Once they have that data, you'd either be recruited into their program or classified as a security risk. And if I'm classified as a security risk? People who are classified as security risks have a tendency to suffer tragic accidents, Dr. Martinez said bluntly. Marcus slumped against one of the workbenches, the weight of the situation finally hitting him fully. So what are my options? Run? Hide? Spend the rest of my life pretending to be normal? You could, Jake said. But there's another possibility. You could join us. Dr. Martinez activated a new section of the holographic display, showing what appeared to be architectural plans for a large facility. The Prometheus Research Initiative has been developing a training and research center in Colorado. We call it Haven. It's a place where enhanced individuals can learn to fully control their abilities, work with others like them, and develop ways to use their capabilities for positive purposes. Like what? Medical research that would be impossible without enhanced cognitive abilities, Professor Vasquez said. Engineering projects that require superhuman strength and precision. Environmental restoration work that needs individuals who can operate in extreme conditions. Jake moved to stand next to Marcus. I spent last summer at Haven. It was the first time in my life I didn't have to hold back, didn't have to pretend to be weaker than I am. I learned techniques for controlling my abilities that I never would have discovered on my own. But what about my education, my research here? Dr. Martinez smiled for the first time since Marcus had met her. Haven isn't a permanent relocation, it's a training program. Most participants spend a few months there during summer breaks, learning control techniques and connecting with others who share their situation. Then they return to their normal lives, but with a better understanding of their abilities and support from the initiative. Professor Vasquez pulled up another display showing academic transcripts and research publications. Many of our participants have gone on to make breakthrough discoveries in their fields, precisely because they learned to harness their enhanced capabilities rather than hide from them. Marcus studied the information being presented to him, his mind racing through the implications. What about the Heritage Foundation? Do they just give up if I disappear for a summer training program? That's where things get interesting, Dr. Martinez said. We've been planning an operation to neutralize Dr. Sterling's investigation, but it requires someone on the inside, someone he's already interested in studying. You want me to be bait. We want you to be a double agent, Jake corrected. Pretend to cooperate with Dr. Sterling's research while actually gathering intelligence on Heritage Foundation operations. It's dangerous, but it would help us protect other Prometheus children and potentially shut down their recruitment program entirely. The room fell silent as Marcus processed this proposal. Everything he'd thought he knew about his situation had changed completely in the space of a few days. He wasn't just a college student trying to hide unusual abilities. He was apparently part of a shadow war between organizations with very different visions for the future of enhanced humans. How long do I have to decide? Marcus asked. Dr. Sterling is planning to approach you tomorrow, Professor Vasquez said. If you're going to work with us, you need to be prepared for that conversation. Dr. Martinez handed Marcus a small device that looked like an ordinary smartphone. This is a secure communication device. It looks and functions like a regular phone, but it has encrypted channels that connect directly to the initiative. If you decide to help us, you'll use this to report on Dr. Sterling's activities. Marcus pocketed the device. What happens if I get caught? We extract you immediately, Dr. Martinez said. The initiative doesn't abandon its people. But the best way to avoid getting caught is to be genuinely surprised by what Dr. Sterling reveals to you. Let him think he's recruiting you rather than the other way around. Jake moved toward the door. We should wrap this up. Campus security does patrol this area occasionally, and we don't want to explain why we're having a midnight meeting in an abandoned building. As the group prepared to leave, Professor Vasquez approached Marcus. There's one more thing you should know. Your father didn't just work on Project Prometheus. He was one of the lead scientists. His research is the foundation for everything we understand about quantum field enhancement. My father never told me that. Your father has been carrying the guilt of Project Prometheus for 25 years. The program was shut down because some of the early experiments went wrong. People died, Marcus. Enhanced individuals who couldn't control their abilities, or whose enhancements proved unstable. Dr. Martinez joined them. That's why Dr. Chen has been so insistent that you hide your abilities. He's afraid that if people learn about enhancement technology, they'll repeat the mistakes of Project Prometheus. But we've learned from those mistakes, Jake added. The techniques we've developed at Haven are based on 25 years of additional research and experience. We know how to help people like us control their abilities safely. Marcus followed the group out of the building, his mind churning with everything he'd learned. As they reached the campus quad, Dr. Martinez pulled him aside. Marcus, I need you to understand something. If you decide to work with us, you'll be putting yourself in real danger. The Heritage Foundation doesn't hesitate to eliminate threats, and if they discover you're working against them, they won't give you a chance to explain. But if I don't work with you, other people like me might disappear. That's right. Quote. Marcus looked around the quiet campus, thinking about all the normal students sleeping peacefully in their dorms, unaware that people with extraordinary abilities walked among them. Some of those enhanced individuals were trying to make the world better. Others were apparently trying to control or eliminate people like him. I'll do it, Marcus said. But I want to know everything about my father's research, about what really happened in Project Prometheus, and about what the Heritage Foundation is ultimately trying to accomplish. Dr. Martinez smiled grimly. You'll know everything by the time this is over. I promise you that. As the group dispersed into the night, Marcus walked back to his dorm with the secure phone heavy in his pocket. Tomorrow he will begin the most dangerous deception of his life. But tonight, for the first time since his abilities had manifested, he didn't feel alone. Marcus was reviewing quantum mechanics equations in the library when Dr. Sterling found him the next afternoon. The psychology professor appeared at his table with the quiet precision of someone who had been watching and waiting for the right moment to approach. Mr. Chen, perfect timing, Dr. Sterling said, settling into the chair across from Marcus without imitation. I was hoping we could continue our conversation from yesterday. Marcus looked up from his textbook, affecting the mild surprise of a student interrupted during study time. Dr. Sterling, right? The psychology professor? That's correct. I specialize in performance psychology and stress response research. Dr. Sterling placed a manila folder on the table between them. I've been reviewing your academic records, and I have to say, they're quite impressive. Thank you, Marcus replied cautiously, remembering Dr. Martinez's advice to seem genuinely curious about what Dr. Sterling revealed. 3.97 GPA in theoretical physics, published research as an undergraduate, and according to your professors, an intuitive grasp of complex concepts that's quite remarkable. Dr. Sterling opened the folder, revealing what appeared to be Marcus's complete academic file, along with additional documents Marcus didn't recognize. I work hard, Marcus said simply. I'm sure you do, but what interests me isn't just your academic performance, it's the pattern of your achievements. Dr. Sterling pulled out a chart showing Marcus's test scores over time. Look at this progression. Your performance doesn't just improve gradually like most students. You show sudden, dramatic leaps in capability, particularly under high-stress conditions. Marcus studied the chart, genuinely surprised by what he was seeing. Dr. Sterling had somehow obtained not just his grades, but detailed performance metrics from every exam, lab practicum, and research project he'd completed since arriving at Riverside University. I don't understand what you're getting at, Marcus said, which was partially true. He understood the implications, but not how Dr. Sterling had gathered such comprehensive data. Let me be more specific. Dr. Sterling pulled out another document. This one showing biometric data that Marcus definitely didn't remember providing. Your stress response patterns are highly unusual. Most people show decreased performance under extreme pressure. You show the opposite: enhanced cognitive function, improved reaction times, increased problem-solving capacity. Marcus felt his heart rate increase but forced himself to maintain a confused expression. How do you have this information about me? The university has been conducting a longitudinal study on student performance factors, Dr. Sterling explained smoothly. With your consent, of course. It was buried in the terms and conditions you signed when you enrolled. It was a plausible explanation, but Marcus remembered Dr. Martinez's warning about manufactured consent and invasive data collection. He pulled out the secure phone she'd given him and discreetly activated the recording function under the table. "What does this have to do with your research?" Marcus asked. Dr. Sterling leaned forward, his voice taking on the tone of someone sharing exciting possibilities. "Marcus, I believe you have extraordinary potential that goes far beyond normal human parameters. I'm part of a research consortium that studies individuals with exceptional capabilities, people who represent the next stage of human evolution." Evolution? Marcus allowed genuine skepticism to color his voice. "That sounds like science fiction." "Does it?" Consider the athletes who break records that were considered impossible just decades ago. The savants, who can perform mathematical calculations faster than computers. The individuals who seem to push beyond normal human limitations. Dr. Sterling's eyes were intense, almost predatory. What if those aren't just random outliers? What if they represent something more systematic? Quote, Marcus set down his pen, affecting the interest of a student encountering a fascinating new concept. "Are you talking about genetic mutation?" "Among other things, but also environmental factors, exposure to certain technologies, even inherited traits from parents who were involved in specific research programs." Dr. Sterling was watching Marcus's reaction carefully. "Tell me, what do you know about your father's work before you were born?" The question hit exactly where Dr. Martinez had predicted it would. Marcus allowed a moment of surprise to show on his face. "My father worked in materials testing for the military." "Why?" "Materials testing," Dr. Sterling repeated, making a note in the margin of one of his documents. "Did he ever mention anything about experimental energy sources? Quantum field research? Projects involving human enhancement?" Marcus shook his head. He never talked about his work much, said most of it was classified and boring. Dr. Sterling smiled, but it was the expression of someone who had just confirmed a hypothesis. "Marcus, I'd like to invite you to participate in a special research program. It would involve some advanced testing, cognitive assessments, physical capability measurements, genetic analysis. The goal would be to understand the source of your exceptional abilities and help you develop them further." "I'm not sure I have exceptional abilities," Marcus said carefully. "I mean, I do well in school, but that's just studying hard." "What about yesterday in the gym? Derek Thompson told me you lifted 95 pounds after struggling with just the bar the day before. That's a remarkable improvement in less than 24 hours." Marcus had prepared for this question. "I looked up technique videos online and practiced the movements without weight. Plus, I was just nervous the first time with everyone watching." "Perhaps." Dr. Sterling made another note. "But I'd still like to run some tests. Think of it as a comprehensive assessment of your potential. If the results show what I suspect they will, you could be eligible for some very interesting opportunities." "What kind of opportunities?" Dr. Sterling glanced around the library, then leaned closer and lowered his voice. "Have you ever wondered what it would be like to work on projects that could change the world? Research that pushes the boundaries of what we think is possible? There are organizations that specifically recruit individuals with exceptional capabilities for exactly that kind of work." "Like government research?" "Government, private sector, international consortiums. The point is, Marcus, if you have the kind of potential I think you do, there are people who would be very interested in helping you develop it fully." Marcus pretended to consider this proposition while actually analyzing everything Dr. Sterling had revealed. The psychology professor was clearly working with the Heritage Foundation, but he was also providing valuable intelligence about their recruitment methods and objectives. "What would these tests involve?" Marcus asked. Dr. Sterling pulled out a tablet and showed Marcus what appeared to be a comprehensive testing protocol. Phase 1 would be cognitive assessments, IQ tests, problem-solving under pressure, creative thinking exercises. Phase 2 would be physical capability measurements, strength, speed, reaction time, endurance. Phase 3 would be more specialized testing based on the results of the first 2 phases. More specialized how? That would depend on what we discover about your capabilities. Some individuals show enhanced cognitive processing, others demonstrate unusual physical abilities. A few show more exotic capabilities. Exotic? Dr. Sterling hesitated, as if deciding how much to reveal. There are documented cases of individuals who can manipulate electromagnetic fields, alter molecular structures through touch, or process information at superhuman speeds. If you showed indicators of capabilities like that, we'd want to understand the mechanisms involved. Marcus maintained his expression of fascinated curiosity, while internally marveling at how openly Dr. Sterling was discussing abilities that were supposed to be highly classified. Either the Heritage Foundation was more confident than Dr. Martinez had suggested, or Dr. Sterling was authorized to reveal this information as part of the recruitment process. This sounds incredible, Marcus said, but also kind of unbelievable. Are you saying there are people who actually have superpowers? I'm saying there are people whose capabilities extend significantly beyond normal human parameters, Dr. Sterling corrected. Whether you call them superpowers or evolutionary advantages is a matter of perspective. Marcus pulled out his regular phone and checked the time, affecting the behavior of a student mindful of his schedule. When will these tests happen? We could start as early as this weekend. I have access to advanced testing facilities off campus that would be perfect for this kind of assessment. Off campus? Marcus allowed a note of concern to enter his voice. Why not use the university's facilities? The equipment we need isn't available here, and we prefer to conduct our research in a controlled environment without distractions. Dr. Sterling's tone was reassuring, but Marcus caught the implication that once he was at these off-campus facilities, he would be completely under Heritage Foundation control. I'd need to think about it, Marcus said. This is all pretty overwhelming. Of course, but Marcus, I want you to understand something. Opportunities like this don't come along very often. The research consortium I work with has very specific criteria for participants, and they don't extend invitations lightly. Dr. Sterling stood up and gathered his documents. I'll give you until Friday to decide. If you're interested, we could begin the testing process this Saturday morning. After Dr. Sterling left, Marcus remained in the library for another hour, ostensibly studying but actually processing everything he'd learned. The Heritage Foundation's recruitment approach was more sophisticated than he'd expected. Drive. Sterling had presented the opportunity as a chance for Marcus to discover and develop his potential, rather than as a research study that would expose his secrets. That evening, Marcus used the secure phone to contact Dr. Martinez. They met in a different location this time, a 24-hour diner off campus, where the background noise would mask their conversation from any potential surveillance. How did it go? Dr. Martinez asked as Marcus slid into the booth across from her. He offered exactly what you predicted he would, Marcus said, pulling out his regular phone and playing back the recording he'd made. Advanced testing, off-campus facilities, opportunities to work on world-changing projects. Dr. Martinez listened to the entire conversation, taking notes on a pad that she periodically destroyed and replaced with fresh pages. He's moving faster than we expected. Saturday is only 4 days away. Is that a problem? It could be. We were hoping to have more time to prepare you for what you'll encounter at their testing facility. Dr. Martinez finished listening to the recording and looked up at Marcus. How much did you reveal about your father's background? Nothing beyond what Dr. Sterling already knew, but he definitely knows my father worked on classified military projects. That confirms our intelligence about Heritage Foundation's data sources. They've been infiltrating government databases, accessing personnel records from defunct projects like Prometheus. Marcus sipped his coffee, thinking about the implications. Dr. Sterling mentioned that there are documented cases of people with exotic abilities. How much does the Heritage Foundation actually know about enhanced individuals? More than we'd like, but less than they think they do, Dr. Martinez replied. They've identified patterns and collected data, but they don't understand the underlying mechanisms. That's why they need to test people like you, to figure out how enhancement actually works. And once they figure it out, They'll try to replicate it. Create enhanced soldiers, enhanced intelligence operatives, enhanced researchers. The Heritage Foundation sees people like you as prototypes for mass production. The thought made Marcus's stomach turn. What happens to the prototypes once they've figured out replication? Dr. Martinez's expression was grim. That depends on whether the prototypes are cooperative or not. They spent another hour planning Marcus's approach to the testing session. Dr. Martinez provided him with a small device disguised as a contact lens that would record everything he saw and heard. She also gave him detailed instructions on how to perform during the tests, showing enough capability to maintain Dr. Sterling's interest while concealing the true extent of his abilities. Remember, Dr. Martinez said as they prepared to leave, your goal isn't to fool them completely. It's to make them think they're learning about your capabilities while actually controlling what they discover. What if they have equipment that can detect abilities I don't know how to hide? Then you follow the emergency extraction protocol. But Marcus, try to avoid that if possible. This might be our only chance to get someone inside a Heritage Foundation facility and gather intelligence on their operations. As Marcus walked back to campus, he realized that in less than a week, his entire world had been turned upside down. He'd gone from a quiet physics student trying to hide unusual abilities to a double agent preparing to infiltrate a secret organization that wanted to turn people like him into weapons. The irony wasn't lost on him that Derek Thompson's bullying had been the catalyst for all of this. If Derek hadn't forced him into that first confrontation in the gym, Marcus might never have discovered the larger forces at work around him. Now, as he prepared for what might be the most dangerous weekend of his life, Marcus couldn't help wondering what other secrets were hidden in the seemingly normal world of Riverside University. His phone buzzed with a text from Jake Morrison. Good luck tomorrow. Remember, you're stronger than they know and you're not alone. Marcus smiled grimly as he deleted the message. He was definitely not alone. The question was whether that would be enough to survive what was coming next. Saturday morning arrived with unseasonable storm clouds gathering over Riverside University. Marcus met Dr. Sterling at the designated parking lot behind the psychology building, where a black SUV with tinted windows waited with the engine running. Perfect timing, Dr. Sterling said as Marcus approached. I hope you're ready for an enlightening day. Marcus nodded, the contact lens recorder already active and the secure phone tucked safely in his jacket pocket. I'm curious to see what these tests involve. The drive to the Heritage Foundation facility took 45 minutes through increasingly remote countryside. Marcus noted the route carefully, aware that this information might be crucial for any potential extraction. The facility itself was a nondescript concrete building surrounded by high fences and multiple security checkpoints. Impressive setup, Marcus commented as they passed through the third security gate. We take our research very seriously, Dr. Sterling replied. The work we do here has implications for national security, so precautions are necessary. Inside the facility, Marcus was immediately struck by the advanced technology on display. The corridors were lined with equipment he didn't recognize, and he could see through open doorways into laboratories that looked more like something from a science fiction film than a research center. Dr. Sterling, called a voice from behind them. Marcus turned to see a tall woman in a lab coat approaching. She appeared to be in her 50s, with silver hair pulled back severely, and the kind of precise movements that suggested military training. Dr. Victoria Cross, Dr. Sterling said, meet Marcus Chen, our latest candidate. Dr. Cross extended her hand, and when Marcus shook it, he was surprised by the strength of her grip. More surprising was the subtle sensation he felt, like a low-level electrical current passing between them. Interesting, Dr. Cross said, her eyes narrowing slightly. Very interesting indeed. Mr. Chen, has anyone ever told you that you have an unusual bioelectric signature? Marcus was confused. I'm not sure what that means. Oh, you will, Dr. Cross said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Come along. We have a full day of assessments planned for you. The first phase of testing took place in a room that looked like a high-tech classroom. Marcus was seated at a computer terminal and presented with a series of cognitive assessments that started simple but rapidly became incredibly complex. Take your time, Dr. Sterling said, settling into an observation chair behind a one-way mirror. There's no pressure to complete everything. But as Marcus worked through the tests, he realized that wasn't entirely true. Hidden cameras were tracking his eye movements, sensors were monitoring his vital signs, and the computer was measuring not just his answers but the speed and pattern of his responses. The mathematics problems progressed from college-level calculus to theoretical physics equations that Marcus recognized from graduate-level coursework. He carefully modulated his performance, solving problems quickly enough to demonstrate exceptional ability, but slowly enough to suggest he was being challenged. "Excellent work," Dr. Cross said when the cognitive testing concluded. "Your problem-solving speed is remarkable, particularly on theoretical physics problems, almost as if you're not just solving them, but seeing patterns that others might miss." "I've always been good at math," Marcus replied. "Indeed. Now let's move on to physical assessments." The physical testing facility was unlike any gym Marcus had ever seen. The equipment was clearly custom-built, with sensors and monitoring devices integrated into every piece. Dr. Cross led him to what appeared to be a sophisticated strength testing apparatus. "This machine can measure force output with incredible precision," she explained. "We'd like you to perform a series of exercises while we monitor your capabilities." Marcus approached the machine cautiously. It looked like a combination bench press and universal gym, but with additional components he didn't recognize. When he gripped the handles, he immediately felt the same electrical sensation he'd experienced when shaking Dr. Cross's hand. "The machine is calibrated," Dr. Cross announced. "Marcus, please perform a standard bench press motion. Start light and work your way up until you reach your maximum capability." This was the moment Marcus had been dreading. He began with what appeared to be a modest weight, carefully controlling his movements to simulate normal human exertion. But as he completed each repetition, he became aware that the machine was doing more than just measuring force. It was somehow probing his capabilities, sending subtle electromagnetic pulses through his body. "Fascinating," Dr. Cross murmured, watching readouts on a display screen. "Your muscle fiber activation patterns are highly unusual. It's almost as if you're deliberately limiting your force output." Marcus felt a spike of alarm but maintained his performance. "I'm just trying to use good form." "Of course, but I'm curious what would happen if you didn't worry about form, if you just tried to move as much weight as possible." Dr. Sterling moved closer to the machine. "The readings suggest Marcus has significantly more strength than he's demonstrating. Perhaps we should encourage him to push his limits." Marcus realized that their sophisticated equipment was designed specifically to detect the kind of controlled performance he was attempting. The Heritage Foundation had apparently encountered enhanced individuals before who tried to hide their capabilities. "I'm already trying my best," Marcus said, but even as he spoke, he could see Dr. Cross's expression growing more suspicious. "Marcus," Dr. Cross said, her tone becoming more formal, "we need you to understand something. The equipment we're using can detect biological markers associated with enhanced human capabilities. The readings we're getting suggest that you possess strength levels significantly beyond normal human parameters." Marcus made a split-second decision. If they could detect his capabilities anyway, his best option was to control how much they discovered. "I don't know what you mean," he said, but allowed a note of fear to enter his voice. "Let me be more direct," Dr. Sterling said. "We know about Project Prometheus. We know about your father's involvement in quantum field enhancement research, and we know that you've been hiding abilities that go far beyond normal human strength." The pretense was over. Marcus looked between Dr. Sterling and Dr. Cross, affecting the expression of someone whose deepest secret had just been exposed. "How long have you known?" he asked quietly. "We've suspected for months," Dr. Cross replied, "but we needed confirmation. Marcus, you're not in trouble. In fact, you're exactly what we've been looking for." Dr. Sterling moved to a control panel and activated a large display screen. "Marcus, we'd like to show you something that will change your perspective on your situation." The screen filled with footage that made Marcus's blood run cold. It showed enhanced individuals demonstrating abilities far beyond anything Marcus had imagined. People lifting cars, moving at superhuman speeds, manipulating objects with their minds. "These are Heritage Foundation operatives," Dr. Sterling explained. "Individuals like you who chose to develop their abilities in service to a greater cause." "What kind of cause?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Dr. Cross smiled. "The evolution of humanity itself. Marcus, people like you represent the next stage of human development. But that evolution needs to be guided, controlled, directed toward productive purposes. And if someone doesn't want to be guided, then they become a potential threat," Dr. Sterling said bluntly. Enhanced individuals who operate outside of proper oversight represent significant risks to society. Our job is to ensure that people like you use their abilities responsibly. Marcus realized that this was the moment Dr. Martinez had prepared him for, the point where the Heritage Foundation revealed their true intentions. They weren't interested in studying enhanced individuals. They wanted to control them. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" Marcus said. Dr. Cross activated another section of the display, showing what appeared to be a training facility. "We'd like you to join our development program. 6 months of intensive training to help you reach your full potential, followed by assignment to projects that match your capabilities." "And if I refuse?" "We'd prefer not to discuss that option," Dr. Sterling said. "But Marcus, you should understand that enhanced individuals who reject our program often find their lives becoming complicated." The threat was clear, but Marcus had expected it. What he hadn't expected was what happened next. Alarms suddenly began blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and Marcus could hear the sound of multiple vehicles approaching outside. Dr. Cross spun toward a communication panel. "What's happening?" "Security breach," came a voice over the intercom. "Multiple hostile contacts approaching the perimeter. All personnel secure positions immediately." Dr. Sterling grabbed Marcus's arm. "This way. We need to get you to a secure location." But Marcus had other plans. As Dr. Sterling tried to pull him toward what was obviously a containment area, Marcus finally stopped hiding his true capabilities. He caught Dr. Sterling's wrist in his hand and squeezed, not enough to cause permanent damage, but enough to demonstrate strength that was clearly superhuman. Dr. Sterling's eyes widened in shock as Marcus effortlessly broke free from his grip. "Actually," Marcus said, "I think I'll find my own way out." Dr. Cross was reaching for what appeared to be some kind of weapon, but Marcus moved faster than normal human reflexes could follow. He grabbed the steel support beam running along the ceiling, the same kind of beam Jake had bent in the abandoned physics building, and twisted it into a pretzel shape with his bare hands. "That's impossible," Dr. Cross whispered. "No," Marcus replied. "It's just improbable." The facility's main entrance exploded inward, and through the smoke came Jake Morrison, moving with the inhuman speed Marcus had only glimpsed before. Behind Jake were Dr. Martinez and several other individuals Marcus didn't recognize, all of them displaying abilities that made it clear they were enhanced. "Time to go," Jake called out as he reached Marcus. But Marcus wasn't finished. He turned back to Dr. Sterling and Dr. Cross, both of whom were now backing away in terror. "Tell your organization something," Marcus said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who was no longer hiding what he was capable of. "Enhanced individuals aren't weapons to be controlled. We're people with extraordinary abilities who choose how to use them." He reached out and grabbed a steel filing cabinet, crushing it in his hands as if it were made of aluminum foil. "And some of us choose to protect others from people like you." Quote, as the Prometheus Research Initiative team extracted Marcus from the Heritage Foundation facility, he realized that his days of hiding were truly over. But for the first time since his abilities had manifested, that didn't frighten him. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the main laboratory at Haven, the Prometheus Research Initiative's training facility in Colorado. He was working alongside 12 other enhanced individuals on a project that would have been impossible for normal humans, developing sustainable energy technology that could revolutionize how the world generated power. Marcus called Dr. Elena Vasquez from across the lab. "Your quantum field manipulation is getting more precise. I think we're ready to attempt the full-scale demonstration." Marcus smiled as he carefully adjusted the molecular structure of an experimental energy cell, his enhanced abilities now fully developed and completely under his control. Around him, other enhanced individuals were using their capabilities for projects that would genuinely help humanity: medical research, environmental restoration, technological advancement. His phone buzzed with a message from Jake Morrison, who was back at Riverside University finishing his senior year. "Derek asked me yesterday why you disappeared so suddenly. I told him you transferred to study advanced physics at a private research institute. He seemed disappointed that he couldn't continue your training." Marcus laughed as he typed back, "Tell him I've learned more about strength than he could possibly imagine." That evening, Marcus called his father from Haven's Secure Communications Center. "I'm proud of you, son," Dr. Michael Chen said when Marcus finished explaining everything that had happened. "I spent 25 years trying to hide from Project Prometheus, but you found a way to honor what we learned while avoiding the mistakes we made." Dad, why didn't you ever tell me about the other enhanced individuals? Because I was afraid that if you knew you weren't alone, you might be tempted to reveal your abilities before you were ready to handle the consequences. But it turns out you were stronger than I gave you credit for. And I'm not talking about your physical strength. As Marcus ended the call and looked out at the Colorado mountains surrounding Haven, he reflected on how much his life had changed since that first day in the Riverside University gym. Derek Thompson had mocked his fragile appearance, never realizing that he was challenging someone who could break steel with his fingers. But the real strength Marcus had discovered wasn't in his superhuman abilities. It was in learning to use those abilities to protect others, to advance human knowledge, and to build a better world for both enhanced and normal individuals. The boy who had once hidden in plain sight had become a man who stood openly for what he believed in. And for the first time in his life, Marcus Chen was exactly who he was meant to be. In the end, the steel that broke wasn't the metal he could crush in his hands. It was the chains of fear and secrecy that had bound him for so long. And now, finally, he was free. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.